You're listening to the Whole Hog Sports Podcast. And now, here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hey, welcome in. Arkansas going to play Florida this weekend. It's Norm DeBryan Appreciation Weekend. We're going to talk about that today. These special uniforms they're winning. We'll look back at UCA. We'll have Jacob Rudner from Baseball America. He'll talk to us about Florida, about the SEC. Lots to get to on our show. It's brought to you by H&R Tire and Auto. They're a third-generation family-owned business serving Northwest Arkansas since 1976. Just like great baseball programs, H&R is built on consistency, trust, and doing things the right way. No shortcuts and no gimmicks at H&R Tire and Auto. Arkansas 19-7 after that 15-2 win over UCA on Tuesday night at Baum-Walker Stadium. Bubba, the feel of a game, I don't know if I can ever think of a game that's ever turned that quickly, where you're playing a team, UCA, and Arkansas's already lost this year to Arkansas State. You know, that's in the back of everybody's mind. Is it going to happen to another in-state team? It's 2-1, middle of the fifth inning. Arkansas is not hitting the ball well. And then before you know it, it's 15-2, and you got a 7-inning run rule. It was crazy how fast just the tenor of that game changed.
Yeah. I said, though, and I think everyone – I said 2 runs ain't going to win this game. Mm-hmm. I knew at some point we were going to get on them. It just took a little bit of time. I thought their starter, Jake Pinnell, did a good job. Yeah. Mixing in sliders. He stayed away. Little two-seam fastball, slider combination. I think some of the guys weren't picking up the slider very well. So I thought he did a really good job pitching that game. By the way, he used to play for me. Mm-hmm. Good kid, like him, Fayetteville kid. Good kid, good family. So it was good to see him out there having success. You know, it's kind of tough because you don't want to – you want him to do well, but then, I mean, Arkansas – to the bone. So it's kind of tough when you get in a situation like that. But I was proud of him for the way he went out and competed it. But you're right, though. This offense has a tendency, once it clicks, I mean, it can hit you really quick. I mean, we saw it in South Carolina, and we saw it in the fifth inning, Tuesday night, and that's good to see. You just want those to come more often.
Mm-hmm. Thing is, you get one of those innings, it's usually going to win you a game. I know you can't rely on an 8-run inning or a 10-run inning like they had in the last week, but it does feel like there is a certain, and I think I used the word spurtability when I was talking to Van Horn after the game. It's like, hey, when they get going, they really get going. It's just sometimes it takes a while for that to happen, and there might be multiple games between it happening.
So I heard the spurtability, and I was going to give you a hard time about it. I was actually going to spring it on you at some point today. Is that a word, spurtability?
I just kind of make up words, honestly.
I'll ask Grok later if that's a
I can
real
look it
word.
up right here. I think it might be a word.
That's what was the word you used a lot last year?
2 years ago.
Respondability. Yeah.
The fun thing about ability is that you can just kind of throw something on the front of it and just go. We could say Bubba ability.
I like that.
Bubba ability.
Yeah, I like that.
I don't know what it means.
I don't know either. I guess we can make it. If we can make up a word, we can make up a meaning, right?
I'll come back on Monday with a definition for Bubba ability. But yeah, no, spurtability. They got a little bit of that, or at least they have in the last week.
So the key to that type of inning is, and Dave refers to it a lot, and I teach it all the time, is taking what the pitcher gives you. If they're going to walk you, let them walk you. In the SEC, it's hard. It's hard on a Tuesday night. I mean, these days, Tuesday games are different. We've talked a lot about it. There's been a lot of SEC teams losing on Tuesday nights. You're not going to get 4, 5, 6 hits in a row. That's hard to do. But you can draw a couple of walks, get on an error, and then boom, you pop one over the fence or in the gap. And that's what I see the team doing. When we have those big innings, it usually starts with a walk. Mm-hmm. A walk, an arrow. They give us an opening, and we take advantage of it from there. And I think that's when this team's at its best, is when they're taking what the pitcher gives you. Not chasing pitches out of the zone or swinging at that pitcher's pitch. Let that pitcher's pitch go. So what? It's 0-1. The pitcher's going to make a mistake at some point. Give him time, and he'll screw something up, and then you get a pitch to hit.
Yeah, what was it? It was a Pompey walk that started off that inning.
Yeah.
Let's see, Pompey walk, Ruiz single, Kozel single. That was an RBI. Helfrich walked, and so it's like a nice. And then they went to the bullpen. Let's see, Zach Stewart walked. Micah New hit a double. It's a nice combination of, it's not just walk,
Right.
hit. It felt like it was good at bats that they string together.
Yeah. And once you get going like that, it's contagious. I mean, hitting's contagious. Unfortunately, so's not hitting. And you see it at times. But, yeah, it's good when the offense is clicking like that. It's a lot of fun to watch this team. From top to bottom, it's a lot of fun.
I asked TJ Pompey if he'd ever let off an inning and come back to the plate later in that inning and there still be no outs. He said he never had. I mean, like the number of hitters who ever have been able to experience that's got to be a really low number.
Yeah, that doesn't happen a whole lot.
No.
And then to hit a grand slam. Yeah. I mean, on top of that, I mean, I love that swing he took though. Guy started with a breaking ball and then came back with another one, and boy, it looked like he was sitting all over it. He hammered that ball to left field.
And then that wasn't even the most impressive home run that he hit. I mean, 426 feet to dead away center. That was. What did what Van Horn call it earlier? He said it takes a man to hit a home run like that, and Pompey's hit a couple of them.
Yeah, that ball, the one he hit to center was 112 off the bat.
Wow.
And that ball was hit hard, and he's an exciting player. It's fun watching him.
Well, I wrote this the other day. I think he's raised his batting average by 75 points. Yeah, I think 75 points since SEC play began. So in 2 weeks. Like, and I would think that if you're a hitter who's struggling right now, like Carson Brumbaugh, if he gets another, or when he gets another opportunity, or, Kohio Aloy obviously is in a slump. Like I think you got to look at TJ Pompey and say, look at this guy. Look at what people were saying about him 2 weeks ago. Right. And now all of a sudden, you're talking about he's a second leadoff hitter in the 9-hole.
Hey, you think about, I go back to that Stetson. I hate to even bring it up, but 4 punch outs against Stetson, and then you look at where he's at now. But that just goes to show you how mental the game is, and it can beat you down if you let it. And I think he's done a good job of kind of flipping that switch, and then just having pure at bats. Taking pitches when he needs to. He'll chase a slider every once in a while. I mean, everyone does. But I think for the most part, he's got his approach has gotten way better at the plate.
I really like how he plays defense at third base, too. I know he had that bad day against South Carolina in the finale, but I just think maybe he was having a bad day overall. Didn't have a good day at the plate, didn't have a good day in the field. But, like bad days in the field for him have been pretty uncommon.
Yeah. I love the way he moves to the ball. His athleticism at third base, footwork, everything. I think it's good. I think that was kind of fluky. Those 2 errors.
Yeah,
could have been 3.
Could have had a third.
Yeah, they got some home field advantage there with the base knock. But that was a tough one. The first one was a tough one in South Carolina. Top spin ball, kind of ate him up a little bit. I kind of caught him between. You always talk about good infielders create their own hop. I think that time you don't see him caught in between very often. I think I caught him between on that one.
Hey, when it comes to your game day, you want the best in your lineup. That includes your eggs. Eggland's Best delivers more of the nutrition you need with 6 times more vitamin D and 25% less saturated fat than ordinary eggs. You can score now with Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs. For more information, visit egglandsbest.com. What did you think of UCA? Because, they've been competitive in the midweek. They beat Vanderbilt in Nashville. I think they took Ole Miss kind of down to the wire in Oxford, and certainly they had Arkansas. They're giving them everything they wanted for basically half a 9-inning game.
I like them. I like Coach Harlan. I'm a big fan of him. Spigner's there. I like him. I like their staff. Got to meet Coach Holliday, their recruiting coordinator. I think they do a really good job of bringing in players. And I've got a few players that are playing for them right now that are, one wasn't playing, Casey Shipley, their catcher. He's got a broken thumb, so he wasn't in the lineup, which kind of stunk because I was looking forward to seeing him play. But I think they've done a really good job of bringing in a good mix of players. They still bring in some freshmen, but they're out there in the transfer portal. They're in the JUCO ranks, and so they bring in a lot of good players. I think their program's headed in the right direction.
Yeah, they're 13-12 overall after they played Arkansas. They're 3-3 in the A-Sun. Stetson, they're the favorite in the A-Sun, but we'll see if UCA can give them a run for their money this year.
Yeah, and Stetson's pretty good.
I think Stetson's really good.
Yeah,
I think that there's 2 or 3 teams that Arkansas played in the non-conference who you look at their record right now, you say, well, that's not real good. But then you kind of have to take a step back and say, hey, once they get into their conference, what's that going to look like? Like Xavier, I'll pull up what Xavier's record here is right now. I know at the last time I checked, they were 6-15, Bubba, but they had played Arkansas and they had played Oregon and they'd played Oregon State, and all of those games were on the road. Those are all quad one games when you look at the RPI. So right now they're 8-18, but I have to believe that when they get into Big East play, and there's not as many teams in the Big East, I think they might start conference play. They either started it last weekend or they started this weekend. But I have to believe that once they start playing Big East teams on the regular, that they're going to win a lot more games because of the way that they, kind of prepared themselves, tested themselves in the non-conference.
Yeah, I think so. And they've got guys that can throw the ball over the plate, sinker slider guys that pitch to contact. They've got guys up and down the lineup that can hit the ball. I think they're going to be in pretty good shape. So, you look at some of the teams we played early, I think are going to end up having pretty good seasons.
Yeah, like I said, I think Stetson's one of them. I don't know what their record was when they left here, but I think it was, they were, 5 games under 500, something like that. But again, they're going to get into their conference. They're 12-14 right now. Arkansas State, they lost to Georgia State over the weekend, a series after they had beaten Southern Miss. So, we'll see what happens with them in their conference. Did you see where Tarleton State hit Texas in the midweek about a week or so ago?
Yeah.
And it was basically it was very similar pitching, or I think it was a similar group of pitchers that threw against Arkansas in that Monday game down in Arlington.
Yeah. Anytime Texas loses, I'm all over that. So
you're watching.
Yeah, I was that was that was one of the highlights of that day.
Yeah, well, Arkansas, their RPI right now, number 49, and I'm going to keep talking about that all season just because it does concern me. But that did come up here in the last. UCA actually helped them, surprisingly, helped them the other day. Their RPI's come up quite a bit since the South Carolina series. If they beat Florida this weekend, that's a big deal because number one, you don't want to lose at home, but number two, I mean, Florida, they had a tough weekend last week. They lost to Alabama. But I still think that there's a lot of talent on that Florida team, and they're going to be there at the end of the year. Maybe not a host, who knows? But they're going to be like what do you call it, the fly in the ointment? Like I think that's going to be Florida at the end of the year. They're going to be a team that I don't think you want to play, especially with those two starters.
Oh, without a doubt. You look at Peterson and then King. Those are two guys you don't want to face in a regional. So I think when it's all said and done, they're going to be all right. I think they're having some offensive woes, kind of like they're similar to us, and there's a ton of talent in there, but they just had a rough weekend. And I don't know if Alabama's pitching's that good or if it was just an off weekend for them. I don't know what happened, but yeah, they didn't do much at the plate this past weekend.
It's like 2 Friday nights in a row. They almost got no hit by South Carolina, but the game went to extra innings. But South Carolina took a no hitter into the 9th, and then last week Alabama no hit them. One guy no hit at Florida, and so that's odd to me that happens 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, and you look at Gunther, he's got pretty good stuff from South Carolina, but I don't think he's got no hit type stuff.
Yeah,
at least the way we approached him, we did a great job.
He has hit stuff the way Arkansas.
Yeah. Our approach against him was amazing. Now, there were a couple borderline pitches he didn't get that he wanted. Next pitch gets hit real hard. That's baseball. That's part of it. But yeah, I loved our approach against him, and we'll see what happens. So I think Gackle. I think if he goes out and throws like we know he can, I think he'll do well against this lineup.
And we'll talk more about Florida with Jacob Rudner coming up here in just a minute from Baseball America. I wanted to go back to Tuesday night's game and get your thoughts on the pitching, and we'll work in reverse here. Ty Briscoe came in the 9th inning. I think it was the 9-hole hitter, and a couple of pinch hitters. So keep that in mind. But I mean, it's the first time he's ever pitched in a college game. Strikes out the side, 9 strikes and 13 pitches. Matt Hobbs told me a week or so ago, he said, we really like what we're seeing from him in the bullpen. This is another left-hand arm that, we'll see if it can be replicated against conference teams. But I would think that with the way he pitched against UCA the other night, if there's an opportunity to get him into a game on the weekend against these conference teams, like Like, you need to get him out there and see if that's something that, translates to conference play too.
Yeah. It was funny, Matt. So I mentioned Casey Shipley, one of their players. He's a veteran guy, been around for a long time. Hurt, so he's almost like an extra coach on their staff.
Mm-hmm.
He texted me after the game, and he's like, "Who's this dude?
Yeah.
Who's Briscoe?
Yeah.
He's not even on our scouting report." We're thinking, okay, there's a freshman coming in that hasn't thrown yet this year. We're expecting just like a stock lefty. He comes out throwing 96, 97. And so it was just kind of funny, the text that Casey sent me. So it was, but he looked really good. What I thought was impressive is first pitch breaking ball. Landed that first pitch breaking ball, and then from there I was impressed with the fastball. I didn't know he had that good of an arm.
When I go back to January, whenever I was putting together our baseball preview magazine, I talked to the coaches about everybody, and I get their thoughts on everybody. And I tell them, I'm like, hey, if a guy's not going to play, tell me. We won't put his name in there. That way you're not building unnecessary expectations for people. This year, there's only 34 players on the roster, or I guess there's more than 34, but like it's a limited number of players on the roster, and so there were quotes on everybody. But the shortest quote on the pitchers was Ty Briscoe, and unfortunately, his name is first in alphabetical order, and that's how we listed the pitchers in the magazine. So Ty Briscoe, Matt Hobbs gave me like 2 or 3 sentences on him because he's going through a throwing program at that point, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was along the lines of, he's going through a throwing program right now. I don't really know what to expect from him. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And then, you get on down the line. You got, paragraphs about Gabe Gackle and Parker Coyle and Hunter Dietz. And, but I just thought that was kind of funny because I thought the tone from what he said in January, and I think it was on his part, legitimately, I don't know how this is going to look for him this year, to whenever I talked to him last week about, hey, we've been pretty excited about what we've seen from him in bullpens. It's a good reminder that just because you look one way when the season begins, that's not how you have to look as the season progresses. And it's a good reminder that there's a lot of coaching and developing and that kind of stuff going on as the season progresses.
Yeah, I think it's awesome that these guys are still getting better. I mean, they're working every day, and I always talk to the players about it. Like, if I do, you hear my post game, like when I talk to the guys, and I typically give them a lot of credit for the work they put in that no one else sees. And you see a guy like Ty, and I noticed he was listed as a left-handed hitter on the lineup card that day, and that kind of stood out to me because I don't remember seeing him. Maybe he's been on there, but I don't remember seeing him listed as a left-handed hitter.
I don't know. I know whenever they signed him, I think they signed him as a two-way because they got that's going to become. I think that's going to become a lot more important as the roster. Like what's happening right now, you've got these called DSAs, designated student athletes, to where you can put that tag on a player and it allows you to go over the 34-man limit. But that only exists for players who are in the system right now. It's kind of like that COVID year that everybody got for 4 or 5 years. Like this DSA, eventually by like 2029, 2030, nobody's going to have this DSA tag anymore. And if there's not any, adaptations to the roster limits, there's going to be a 34-man roster. So where I'm going with all that is I feel like the importance of having a two-way guy, Cornelison's a two-way guy. Carson Brumbaugh's not pitching this year, but there's thought that he's going to be a two-way guy. Briscoe, I don't know what kind of hitter he can be, but, maybe he's a two-way guy. Jackson Kersher, he went to OU, I think, as a hitter, and they put him on because he also pitched in high school, and he developed a lot as a pitcher, and now he's a pitcher. But I feel like having that ability is going to be really important moving forward.
Yeah, and do you feel like sometimes they're just making rules up as they go along like that?
They're just trying to keep up with what the courts are doing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the hard part. And
Yeah.
and I will say this, Dan Trump, who is Arkansas's baseball sport administrator, he's I don't know his exact title, he's like an associate AD in the athletics department. He told me that the judge who was in charge or who oversaw the House settlement in California, that she was concerned about what the roster limits would do to the number of players who were in the system right now, which is where that designated student athlete came from, where it's fewer kids that you have to kick out of the system and send down to Division II, Division III, NAIA, wherever they end up. So that's kind of where that came from. But yeah, I mean, I don't think the coaches like the 34 limit. I think that they would rather see it in the higher 30s, maybe up closer to 40, which is what it was pre-house settlement. So to answer your question, it's just I think it's very fluid.
Yeah, but to your point, if you've got multiple two-way players, that helps you a ton.
Well, I mean, it's
one
like
player takes up, he's two people.
Especially if you've got a legitimate two-way player. Like they're playing Florida this week, Jack Caglione. That was a legitimate two-way guy in college. I don't know when the last time Arkansas really had a legitimate two-way guy is. Brumbaugh, I think he might be able to be one before he's gone. Cornelison, I think there's a chance there. We'll see. We haven't seen him play in the field a whole lot. I think maybe one or two times this year. We've seen him on the mound more than we have on the field. Like I'm sitting here kind of going back, like who was Arkansas's last legitimate two-way guy? Maybe
Like Brett Eibner.
Brett Eibner's the name that comes to mind. Zach Cox came here as a two-way guy, but he was a lot better hitter than he was a pitcher.
Yeah.
So it's like it's easy to say, hey, we need some two-way guys. It's a lot harder to find those.
It's hard to find them, and it's hard to get them their work in. Like you look at Brumbaugh, if he wasn't a shortstop, he'd be a two-way guy right now, but I think that's too taxing on the arm. Mm-hmm. All the throws from shortstop and then getting on the bump as well. I wouldn't be surprised if you see Carson throwing some bullpens here coming up, just something else to look at with him. I don't know if they'll do it this year or not. You could see him on the bullpen mound soon. I don't know, but I think it's valuable, and I think going down the road, I think it might change the way they kind of recruit players just a little bit. So
speaking of two-way guys, I want to go back like a week and a half here real quick, maybe a little over a week. I think it was Wednesday against Northern Colorado. Did you hear Luke Cornelison in the postgame talk about he had been taking ground balls at third the day before he pitched, and he said he took a ground ball off his index finger and like cut it open, and he had to learn the day that he pitched how to throw a new curve or a slider grip. Did you hear this?
I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. But that's pretty cool.
Actually it turned out being one of his best pitches that day against Northern Colorado.
So he probably ended up going with a spike pitch.
Maybe we didn't get too far into the weeds, but he had talked about how his finger had split open and he had to go to a new. He said, I think it was his curveball. He said that it didn't feel right when he was throwing his curveball, and so in the bullpen they had to change up his grip, and he came out and his curveball pitched really well. I just thought that was really interesting, and kind of again it goes to the like a lot of those little intricacies that happen for two-way guys that people who aren't around the ballpark probably don't understand.
Yeah, no, I didn't hear that. We'll have to give Hobbs credit. That's great coaching from Matt Hobbs right there to make that adjustment on the fly. But look, Luke Cornelison is really good defensively. Mm-hmm. I mean, he can I watch him take ground balls like during infield and during pregame. He's good defensively. It's a matter of the bat coming around for Luke. I think it's going to be the difference of him being a two-way guy down the road or not.
Yeah.
But he's good on the bump. He's really good on the bump. I hate that he gave up the 0-2 home run in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like he tried to come up in the end. He just didn't quite get it there. And honestly, it looked like the dude was cheating to a fastball right there. With the score like it was, I think he just
22-4.
Yeah, I think the guy just said, "Look, I'm either going to swing and miss, or I'm going to hit a home run." But yeah.
Real quick before we get Jacob Rudner in here, your thoughts on Carter Rutenbar and the performance that he had Tuesday night to come off the bench. And he said his words were he was pissed off at the at-bat that he had against South Carolina, where he came in a pinch hit role for Cujillo, just like he did against UCA, and he struck out. Mm-hmm. And Van Horn said it was his worst at-bat of the year. That he usually doesn't have bad at-bats, but it was a bad one. And, so he comes in, it's a double off the wall, and I guess his teammates were giving him a hard time because they thought that he should have hit it out. Next time he comes up and he doesn't miss, and it's 378 feet, but boy, it was a really pretty looking swing.
So, I loved what he said when he said I was pissed off. I like that because you think about it, you have to sit and wait after that at bat to your next at bat. It's not like he's in the lineup every day, and so he doesn't get to go back the next day or the next inning get another bat. So I really like the way he said that. It says a lot about him as a player. Like he's got a little bit of in him, and I like that. Yeah. I like it a lot. The first ball he hit, I thought it was gone. As soon as he hit it, I was like, yes.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, no.
But
But off the bat, I thought that ball's gone.
Yeah, it
I
looked
don't know
like
what
it.
happened.
I don't know either.
A bird or something. I don't know what happened. But the second one, it was no doubter line drive. But to your point, I love his at bats. Like he doesn't. I call it mailing in and at bat. Like you just go up there and it's like, from my vantage point, I look down and I'm like, sometimes I was like, what's the approach here? With Carter, you always have a good idea. He's gonna battle. He's gonna give you a really good quality at bat. I think the South Carolina at bat, I think he just got fooled. The guy dropped a high breaking ball in, probably a 50-50 pitch at the top of the zone. It looked like a strike, but it was a tough pitch. I think he got fooled by the lefty on that. But, it was one at bat. But I do like how he goes out and kind of grinds out at bats, and he's gonna give you a quality at bat.
We'll get Jacob Rudner on after this real quick. I think everybody who was in the ballpark, and maybe even some who were watching on TV or the stream, they saw Van Horn get after Kahio Aloy pretty good in the dugout after that second strikeout. And you heard him talk a little bit, reference Aloy a little bit about, I think he needs to step up in the box. And then today he mentioned that 3-2 pitch and the strikeout where, he said he was swinging, like he was going to get a fastball and the ball's a foot and a half off the plate. Said that that he stood in yesterday against some live hitting, said his first at bat did not go real well. The second, third, and fourth at bats got better. And the fifth at bat, he said he hit a changeup 440 feet. So, we'll see. It certainly sounds like, and especially with these right-handers that Florida's going to throw, that Rutenbar is probably going to get a chance to start in that DH role. But they need Kahio Aloy to figure this out, what's going on with him. Because like you and I were talking about the other day, they're not going to reach their full potential as a team unless they've got Kahio Aloy playing at a high level like he was last year, I feel like.
Yeah, he's such a threat in the lineup. The last strikeout, it was a 3-2 pitch, and I said on the air, I said, I think everyone in the ballpark knows what's coming right here. You knew he was going to get a slider right there. He's not getting a fastball.
Yep.
And, you don't sit slider, but in the back of your mind, you got to know. And he swung at it, like it was a 2-0 fastball, like he was just sitting dead red, and or like you and I already talked about, like he already made up his mind.
Yeah.
Like sometimes as a hitter, I think you make up your mind. Can't do it, but you make up your mind, I'm going to swing here. It's 3-2, I'm swinging, and boy, he missed it by a long way, and you hate to see that. I love Kahio. I love his potential. He's such a threat at the plate, but I think there's times where you got to make an adjustment, and if you're getting beat by the slider, look slider, sit slider if you have to, and give up the fastball. If you're seeing 75% sliders, sit on it. You know what? If you sit on a slider and you drive it in the gap, I bet you get a fastball next at bat.
I think the frustrating thing about that 3-2 strikeout was that on 2-2 he had a really good take, and then 3-2 just kind of falls back into the same tendencies.
Yeah, but I think he gets up there and he's just like, I gotta drive these runs in. My job's to drive in runs, and I hate the terminology trying too hard, because everyone tries, but I think there's something to be said there. I think sometimes you try to do, not really try too hard, you try to do too much.
Yeah.
And we already talked about the key to this lineup is take your walk. If they know you're going to swing at that pitch, they're going to keep swinging it. I guarantee you, Florida's seen the video. They've got a scouting report. And if you're a guy that's going to chase, they're going to throw you chase pitches. You prove you're not going to swing at it, then they come in the zone, you do damage.
We'll see. He's going to get another chance. This is not a thing where you bench him for the rest of the season.
No.
It's just you sit him out on the side, and they'll see if that fixes things.
But one quick thing, I think he's got to do better against lefties. If you're a righty,
He's 1 for 13, I think, or one for his last 13 against left-handers.
yeah. So if you're a righty, you gotta hit lefties.
Yeah.
You have to. And if it's the changeup away getting you out, if it's whatever it is getting you out, you've got to be able to make that adjustment. That's hitting, Matt. It's just a game of adjustments. Being able to, there's a game plan, there's approach based on that dude on the bump, and you've got to make an adjustment sometimes.
They want to tell you Southern Loft believes your home should reflect your unique personality. That's why they offer a wide variety of stylish furniture pieces that are perfect for any taste, whether you're looking for a new sofa for the living room, a sleek dining table for your kitchen. They've got just what you need when you're looking for that piece of furniture that reflects you. Visit Southern Loft at 3155 North College Avenue in Fayetteville or call 479-856-6100. We're joined now by Jacob Rudner. He covers college baseball for Baseball America, formerly a reporter covering the Florida Gators. So thought it'd be good to have Jacob on to talk about Florida and the SEC. Jacob, appreciate you being with us. When you see Florida this year, I wonder what your thoughts have been.
You know, I see a team that on its best days looks like a title contender. And I don't think you need to look too much further than the next couple years of draft rankings. You have Liam Peterson, who is a mid to early first round pitcher in this year's draft. You have Brendan Lawson, who in my mind is the best hitter in next year's draft and maybe the first overall pick if something were to happen with Dax Whitney's projection. Aiden King to me is one of the best pitchers in next year's class. And there's a number of other guys who are early top 3 rounds, let's say, picks over the course of the next 3 years throughout that roster. And when it clicks, it's one of the most talented and best teams in the country to me. That being said, I don't know that there's another team out there nationally right now that has been as volatile as Florida has been so far this year. When the Gators are not playing their best baseball, when the at-bats get a little bit sloppier, when the pitching isn't throwing strikes consistently, this is a team that looks like it could miss the tournament to me. And I don't know that there's a range that wide with any other team in the country right now, from title contender on its best nights to tournament miss on its worst nights. And it's been a really challenging team to figure out so far this year. You can see that in our rankings. They've been as high as number 14, and right now they're out of the poll. So huge movement every week. It's kind of been a, what have you done for me lately case to the extreme with the Gators. Mm-hmm. And it's been hard to kind of pin down.
They had in the offseason, Kevin O'Sullivan missed several weeks for, I don't think it was ever said why he missed time, but he wasn't, in that role. Of course, they lose an assistant coach to Tennessee. Just a weird offseason. Does it feel like maybe some of that, I don't know, volatility is the right word, but some of that instability from the offseason has carried over into the season?
It's impossible to say for sure because I'm not in the locker room and I don't know what exactly is influencing their, erratic style of play. But it's hard for me to imagine that it doesn't have at least some impact. And it was part of the reason why Baseball America, to my knowledge, was the low guy on Florida going into the season. We had them ranked number 22 in our preseason poll when most places that I saw had them inside the top 15. Why did we do that? Well, we weren't terribly confident in the off the field situation. As you said, Kevin O'Sullivan misses several months due to, personal circumstances. He has to step away. Chuck Girolamo leaves the program in the fall as its de facto leader at the time and goes to rival Tennessee. And it's left with this situation where it doesn't really have a voice in charge of the program on the coaching side. And they had to make new hires late in the process. And that isn't how you have a clean off season. It's not how you prepare perfectly for the season. And so I don't know, again, if that is the root of the issues that Florida is having, but I would also be hard pressed to believe that it doesn't have at least some role in the, inconsistency that we've seen so far.
You mentioned the pitchers. I think that, if you look at just stuff, there's probably not another team that has a better 1-2 combination than Peterson on Friday and Aiden King on Saturday. But it is interesting to me when you look at Peterson's numbers. It's a 4.15 ERA. He's got a 1.22 WHIP. King's numbers are better, 1.27 and 1.02. I wonder what you've seen out of them. And are Peterson's numbers, are they an indication that something's going on with him? Because I guess with him, you would expect maybe a little bit lower for that type of high round arm this early in the season.
Quite frankly, I mean, that's kind of been the story of his career so far. It's been premium stuff and inconsistent results. It's been the case again this season so far. In his best outings, when he's around the zone, the arm slot doesn't vary very much. He's very over the top on his best days. He's using his curveball a lot. Historically, Liam Peterson's best starts are very much tied to higher curveball usage. When he is going to that pitch roughly 15% of the time, he's having dramatically better outings. Last year in 2025, Liam Peterson's 4 best starts were his highest curveball usage starts. So far this season, I believe 2 of his 3 best starts were his highest curveball usage starts. We see him get away from that sometimes a little bit, which is perplexing. And I think when he does get away with it, it causes his arm slot to drift. And it's especially apparent when he's throwing his slider. If you take a look at some of the video of Liam Peterson throwing a fastball and then a slider in the same at-bat, in my opinion, to the naked eye, it's rather apparent that he's not throwing the pitch from the same spot. And in the SEC, where these guys are like pseudo-professional hitters at this point, they pick up on these kinds of things. They're able to cue in on what's coming if you're going to drift like that. And he does have a tendency to have that kind of an issue. And so when he's really tightened up and he's throwing from the same slot with most of his pitches, I think that he is really tough to beat. And there's a reason why he's still viewed, even with all the inconsistency, as an early first round type pick. Because as you said, the stuff is premium. It hardly gets better. But when he's off, he is beatable. Teams have been successful when they wait him out. Teams have been successful when they sit on certain pitches and look for his tendencies mechanically. And it has been kind of his downfall and his worst starts this year. King, for me, is the most consistent starter on that staff. Just a really great competitor. He's an underclassman, still a sophomore, but he's all over the strike zone. Not necessarily going to miss as many bats as maybe you would expect for somebody with the caliber of stuff that he has. But the way that he just kind of controls a game is well beyond his years. And he is kind of their, best and most reliable bet, even if he doesn't have the best stuff of all the, the pitchers on their staff.
Jacob, back on Liam Peterson, I read a lot about he was in the past. He's been, a high carry guy, fastball top of the zone, breaking ball. I've read that he's added a 2-seam fastball to the mix. Is that a pitch he's been trying to use a lot, and does that have something to do with his varying arm slots?
So unless I haven't seen it and I missed it, and I have watched every single one of his pitches, especially recently as we've updated some draft rankings at Baseball America, I haven't seen it yet in a game so far this season. I did see it when I went and caught him in the fall. I don't know if he's terribly comfortable with it yet. The idea was that it was going to give him something to work inside the right-handers, allow his arsenal to grow a little bit more in the East-West categories, because Kevin O'Sullivan, who calls the pitches for them, is very heavy on his slider. He didn't really have something to complement that. And as you mentioned, huge ride, big curveball. Liam Peterson's best stuff, and especially with that very high-handed angle, is a little bit steep. It's north-south, excuse me. The 2-seam fastball allowed him to get inside a little bit more. But I don't know that we've seen it. The arm drift to me is more centered around the slider than it is anything else. I don't know if the fastball usage has so much impacted that as much as it is which breaking ball he's throwing.
You look at Florida and what's happened to them the last 2 Fridays offensively. They almost got no hit by South Carolina. South Carolina took a no-hitter into the 9th of a 10-inning game. And then Alabama no-hit them last Friday night. I don't know that you would look at – and I know no-hitters are so – they're so unpredictable. But I don't know that you look at either of those pitchers who had those games or the starting pitchers and say that you would necessarily expect that from them. What do you think has gone on with them offensively in these series openers?
It looked to me like the approach has drifted a little bit, especially last week. And that, doesn't take a genius to say that after you get no hit and struck out 13 times by a pitcher. But, just kind of undisciplined. The swings early in at-bats seemed uncalculated to me. They really got caught up by spin, which has been a problem for Florida in the last couple of years when the regular season records haven't necessarily been so pretty. I think that we're kind of seeing a little bit of that again. I also will say, because I think it's important, teams, even the ones that are volatile and have big offseason storylines, will go through ruts. And I do think that also could be kind of an element of what we're seeing here with Florida. But at the end of the day, yes, the approach has seemingly kind of gotten away from them, especially in the last couple of weeks and certainly last Friday. And we'll see, if they can recover that against Arkansas, which certainly is not the place where you want to go to try and figure things out.
So Baseball America this week, you updated your top MLB draft prospects, went from 200 to 300 prospects. And, one of the really big movers, Jacob, and this doesn't surprise me at all, is Hunter Dietz. He was outside your top 200. Now you've got him at number 76. And I would think that maybe that continues to rise if he continues to pitch well for Arkansas. What have you guys seen from him, and what are you hearing from scouts about what they like about the performances that he's having?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it's important to remember here that Dietz was somebody who was very high profile coming out of high school when he was at Cavalry Christian. There were a lot of scouts on him coming out of the state of Florida. Then he gets to campus, and we haven't necessarily seen him pitch quite yet to the profile that I think some teams had built on him coming out of high school, and that's up until this year. He's been so much better. I think that the big thing for him right now is the velocity, sitting about 95 and up to 98. He's got an excellent slider cutter combo in the upper 80s that he pairs well. And then that curveball looks really good to me. The quality of the pitches and the feel for all of them, the ability to locate them in and around the strike zone has ticked up. The velocity has been impressive. I think the big thing also is just that he looks pretty durable so far this season, and I think that's been a question over the last couple of years for teams. And now that he's kind of realizing some of this potential and delivering upon it, I think it's been pretty easy for teams to kind of start to push him up their board. It was certainly easy for us to do the same thing.
It's a great year for catchers. You got Von Lackey at Georgia Tech, who, is playing really, really well on a good team. You guys have Ryder Helfrich as your number 2 catcher, number 15 overall. What have you seen from him, and why do you think scouts like him so much?
I think that it's really the bat for Ryder Helfrich that carries the profile. Right now, we're in this era of baseball where if you're able to go back there and be a really great defensive catcher and you can't go up there and do much at the plate, you can still have a career. But the guys who are going to be able to be reasonably solid, if not better than that, behind the plate because they're athletic, they've got a good arm, they block well, they've got a good sense for the game, but can also go out there and kind of bang a little bit at the plate, which you don't need me to tell you, Ryder Helfrich is more than capable. Those are the kinds of guys that are going to fly up draft boards. Obviously, Von Lackey, to me, has kind of commanded the conversation of catcher 1 in this year's class. Premium athlete, somebody who can go play second base or in the outfield and still be a prospect. And he brings the bat that he has. He runs quite well as well. The defense is very good. For Helfrich, it's not quite the same athleticism. It's not quite the same defensive skill and kind of fluidity back there, but he is super strong. He's got a big arm, and then that bat is massive. You've got massive EVs coming out of him. He's able to put the ball over the wall consistently. He doesn't necessarily get too far ahead of himself. There aren't a lot of bad swings in the mix coming out of Ryder Helfrich, especially later in at-bats. We find him to be pretty mature as far as hitting goes, and we think that it'll only get better. One of the toughest things to project is how a catcher defensively will mature from his amateur days into his professional career. If you guys recall, Cal Raleigh was not a particularly great defensive catcher when he was at Florida State and has obviously blossomed into a gold glove, platinum glove type candidate. And that's because the resources at the professional level are so much better for the catcher position, and there just is a lot more room to mature. We think that Helfrich has the tools to be able to make a big-time jump. And I'm not saying that he's Cal Raleigh and he's going to go win a bunch of gold gloves, but I do think that he has starting major league catcher qualities to him and somebody who's going to perform at least average behind the plate.
Yeah, Jacob, when I watch Helfrich, I see a dude that's just super athletic. He can play probably any position on the field. And if you look at the metrics of like just strikes stolen, there's a metric for that. I mean, he's at the top of that every year. I mean, I think he's come a long way defensively as a catcher. And we know the bats definitely come around, but I think he's a guy that could catch for a long time. But I wanted to ask you about Brendan Lawson. I noticed he wasn't in the lineup on Sunday in the Alabama series. And then, I hear that he's dealing with a lower back injury, but I'm looking at his numbers. He looks healthy going off his numbers. Do you know much about where he's at health-wise?
It seems like he's fine. I mean, he was able to DH earlier this week, and I would imagine that, given Florida's circumstances and how badly they need to kind of get off the schneid here, they might continue to push him to get back into the lineup. But it sounds like, for all intents and purposes, he's totally okay. And to your point, yeah, not a lot of signs in the stat line that he's injured so far this season. He's been very good.
Jacob, I think the next couple of weeks are going to really tell us a lot about the SEC and, kind of who the teams are to beat. Do we know right now? I mean, there's a logjam here at the top at 4-2. There's 7 teams at 4-2, and I think you look at every one of these teams and you say, yeah, I like this about them, but there's this that may be a drawback. I mean, what are your thoughts on the SEC race?
I think that it is as tight as it seems with the records, which, are hard to take much from at just 6 games. Mm-hmm. But the fact that the SEC is so well represented at the top of our poll to me says a lot. There's a stat that I've been kind of throwing around this week because I find it's cool. At Baseball America, dating back since 2009, that's when we started doing 15 in-season poll updates. the last 16 national champions have been inside the top 16 at Baseball America 15 times, again, since 2009. So the title picture is pretty clarified by this point in the season, week 7. And just going through our top 25 right now, you got Texas, Georgia, Arkansas, Auburn, Oklahoma, Mississippi State, and that's it right now in the top 16. So you're looking at about half the league that has a chance by that number to win the national championship. I don't think that that's crazy. I know that there are some non-SEC fans that will look at that and go, nah, SEC bias or whatever they want to say. But the reality is this, look at who's won the national championship every single year since 2019. It's the SEC. Mm-hmm. It's the best league in the country. I think that we're seeing that. I think that Texas, if I had to pick a team right now, has really separated itself. I think that it's just kind of done everything perfectly. Auburn's not too far behind, but Auburn is a little bit more pitching centric and doesn't have the same kind of explosiveness at the plate as Texas does. And then I think that, all the other teams that I named in that pack are close and for reasons. And like you said, I think you can nitpick with a couple of them. Texas kind of stands alone as the one that's hardest to nitpick. But that group that I just named within the top 16, if any of them won the national championship in a couple months, it would not surprise me whatsoever.
What have been your thoughts on Arkansas?
I think that they've been really good. I think that the bats have largely delivered. The pitching has been as talented as I'd expect. I wish at times that I'd seen them be more consistent in both categories. Like that weekend against Stetson will really stand out to me in my mind for a couple of weekends, just because I don't think that we saw Arkansas at its best in any regard in those last 2 games. It was just kind of a sloppy, sluggish weekend. I mean, listen, anytime you have a streak that dates back to 2014 of not losing or tying a non-conference home series, that says something. And when it happens, I think that says even more. So the fact that it did, I think, kind of points to some of the inconsistency with this team. But at the end of the day, I mean, how many teams in the country can you realistically name that are definitively more talented than Arkansas right now? The answer is maybe 1 or 2. Like, I think UCLA, when come draft time, will be the most talented team, just given how many guys it's going to have go within the top 8 rounds, plus having the first overall pick doesn't hurt either. And then you have Texas, which I think is similarly kind of in that category of like really talented teams that will be super well represented in the draft over the course of the next couple classes. And then you got the SEC mix of a couple schools of which Arkansas is very much a part. So I view Arkansas as a title contender as much as any team so far this year. Do I think that there are some areas that they can tighten up and be more consistent over the course of the next couple of weeks? Of course. But again, I don't know how many teams you can't say that about. And so, it's good old, same old Arkansas for me.
Jacob Rudner of Baseball America. Jacob, you do a great job. We appreciate you taking some time to talk to us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Thank you. Thanks to Jacob Rudner for taking time to talk to us. A reminder, our baseball podcast brought to you by H&R Tire and Auto. They're a local shop that's been family-owned for 3 generations. They've built their reputation on taking care of customers the right way. That kind of longevity doesn't happen by accident at H&R Tire and Auto. I always find it interesting, Bubba, that we have a tendency, not necessarily you and I, but just here locally or anybody locally talking about the team that they follow, to really nitpick and say, we're not as – and then you get people who, they follow the sport on a national level.
Right.
And, I mean, he's as high on Arkansas as anybody I've heard this year.
And there's a lot of people high on us. I'm high on us. I look at this lineup and I see a really good team top to bottom that just needs to come together. And when they are clicking, they're as good as any team around. He kind of said the same thing about Florida. The only thing I'll push back a little bit on Jacob that he said when he was talking about Ryder and the athleticism. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, in my opinion, there's not a more athletic catcher than Ryder Helfrich in the country. Now, I don't know the other dude, don't know enough about him, so I need to get out there and do my due diligence there and find out about the other guy. But, man, Ryder is an absolute stud athletically. He could play shortstop. Give him a couple of weeks, he could be out there playing shortstop. He could play center field. He could play anywhere on the field. Hell, he could probably pitch if we wanted him to. He's just that type of athlete. So kind of, I wanted to push back a little bit without really pushing back on him because, and I'm a little bit of a homer, but, I mean, I know talent when I see it, and he's about as athletic as they get behind the plate.
You've scouted before.
Yeah.
You scout for the Yankees.
Yeah. It's been like 13 years.
Scouts have a tendency. And the people at BA, they consider themselves to be scouts. They have a tendency to hey, he's really good, but I got to find something wrong with him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that's kind of what that was
Right.
with Helfrich. Because, again, it's hard to point a whole or poke a whole lot of holes in there in his game.
I mean, you can look at guys and you can say, okay, he's got this tool. You know, he's good here, he's lacking here. But when you look at Ryder, I don't see a hole. I mean, I like his swing. I would have said last year's swing direction was a little bit off, a little bit outside the ball, hooking a lot of balls foul. I think his direction this year is phenomenal. I think he's worked really hard on it. But behind the dish, you know, the metric, and I need to get with Bobby Wernis. I'll try to get with Bobby Friday. I'd like to know the metric that they go by, but on the run saved metric, I think he's leading the nation right now behind the plate. And so, I mean, he's good. He's really good.
He's batting .310. His OPS, if I'm doing the math here in my head right now, is 1054. Like, those are good numbers. And I still feel like when you watch Ryder Helfrich, you look at him and say, he's just scratching the surface of what I think he might be at the end of the year.
So when I look at 310, I see the hardest hitting 310 in the nation. That guy is lined out to left, to center, to short. There was one game, I want to say he hit 3 balls over 100 and really had nothing to show for it. I mean, he's been kind of a hard – that's a hard luck 310, if you can say that. And I don't know. I just like his approach at the plate. He's doing a better job of taking what the pitcher gives him. If they're going to walk him, he'll walk. Let the next guy drive him in. I think it helps having Stewart behind him, though. I think anytime you got that big lefty hitting behind you, I think that's helpful.
Yeah. Do you like batting average or OPS better?
OPS. Batting average. So the Yankees tried doing something a couple years ago called Hit FX. It took out batting average. And just takes in hard hit balls, launch angle, chase rate, and it combines it all together. I think that has potential to be a really good stat. But then what ends up happening is you get guys, all they're worried about is hitting the ball hard. Then you get a bunch of selfish hitters out there swinging. All they're worried about is seeing how hard we can hit the ball. I think you could tweak a stat like that and kind of combine it with OPS. I think then you would have your perfect stat because – think about it. I hear guys all the time, you know, say, well, he was 0 for 4 today. He's struggling. No, he's not. He hit 4 balls over 100 or 3 balls over 100 miles an hour. So he just hit it right at him.
You see, like with Helfrich right now, he's got 10 more walks than anybody else on the team. He's got 30 walks. I don't know where that ranks nationally, but I would have to think it's probably a fairly high ranking because he's only played in 25 games. So you're talking over 1 walk per game that he's averaging. So that brings up the on base percentage, and then, you know, when he does get a hold of a ball, and gets the hit, you're talking about 4 doubles, 6 home runs out of 26 hits, and so that brings up the slugging percentage. The same thing, like the same debate, I guess, if you want to call it that, can be had over, ERA or WHIP for pitchers. You know, I've gotten to where I kind of like WHIP better, because it's more of how many runners are you putting on base as opposed to earned runs, which can, there's some variables there.
Yeah.
I feel like WHIP is a lot better number for a pitcher because it's literally how many hits are you giving up, how many walks are you giving up.
No, I think that's a good one. Now, this is kind of contradictory on my part. I like looking at batting average against opponent. Yeah. I want to know what a team's hitting against you. So I'm kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth because that
need OPS against.
Yeah.
Like if they had
honestly,
OPS
there
against
you
you would go with that, right?
Yeah, for real. Because a guy might give up 3 hits, but he may not give up a hard hit. I look at Ethan McIlvain the other day against South Carolina. He gave up 3 hits. I want to say he gave up 3 ground balls. I might be wrong there. I know 2 of them were ground balls that just got in a hole, weren't really hit that hard. And we've seen a couple of our guys this year come in, give up a couple of weak ground ball hits that are like, all right, they're hits, but they were good pitches, and a guy just, happened to get out there and hook it in a hole.
Okay, so I'm doing math in my head again here. 621 OPS against for Arkansas and a 211 batting average against. Oh, those are good numbers.
That's good. Yeah.
Like when you
I had to process that a second.
When you look at OPS, I mean, I've always thought like maybe 900 and higher is a good OPS.
Yeah.
I feel like a 900 OPS is kind of like the equivalent of a 300 batting average. Fair?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you want to compare them, yeah, somewhere around there. I'd have to ponder that a little bit.
So I mean, a 621 OPS against that's a good number.
That's a good number. Yeah,
and it kind of computes to a 211 batting average against right. So I mean, we might be splitting hairs here a little bit. And then WHIP. And the reason I have this conversation is because like there are people that I interact with who they are so against talking about WHIP, OPS. Well, that's not how, baseball is ERA and batting average. It's like, well, no, it can be more than that. But a good WHIP, probably about, 1.1 and lower?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think there's baseball just gets stuck in ruts. Like,
how so?
Well, like 60-yard dash.
Uh-huh.
We send guys off to these showcases, and they run a 60-yard dash. They want a 60-yard. They want to know their 60 time.
Mm-hmm.
In baseball, when do you run 60? When do you run 60 yards?
I guess maybe if you're in the outfield.
And that's a big gap.
Yeah.
That's a long way to run.
Micah New might have had one of those against South Carolina.
He might have had. But when do you run 60 yards in a straight line?
Yeah.
I think some of the stuff that we do is like, I don't care how fast a guy can run a 60. Look at Dominic Fletcher. His 60 time wasn't very good, but I guarantee you hit a ball in the gap, he's going to go catch it before it hits the ground. That's what I want to see. I want to see a guy. How quick is he from home to first? How quick is he from first to third? Those are the things. Or lateral movement. My shortstop. There's guys that can't run. Like Kojal's not fast. He's not super fast, but he's got really good first move. First step is on point. And so he can get to a ball that other shortstops might not get to that are faster than him. And I just feel like some of the stuff that we look at in baseball, it's almost like going back to the whole Moneyball thing, where you're saying we're looking at the wrong things. I think sometimes we look at the wrong things.
So Arkansas is going to keep its rotation the same this weekend. They're going to go Gackle, Dietz, Fisher. Let's go in reverse. Fisher struggled a little bit of late. What do you need to see from him?
I think he needs to command his fastball and then use the curveball off of that. He's got to have – he doesn't need both of those pitches to be successful, but he's got to be able to locate one of them. When he's good, he can throw that fastball right at a right-handed batter's front hip, and it's going to run right over the front door. Or he can backdoor the breaking ball. If he's got both of them, he's really good. But he doesn't need to really have both. I think he needs to be on with one of them. But I haven't given up on Colin Fisher. I think he knows how to get. He's an old school type pitcher that knows how to get outs.
So I was talking with Hunter Dietz yesterday, and one of the things that stood out to me, I asked him. I said, you're throwing, because I think last week he threw like 60% cutters or something in that game against South Carolina. I said, you're throwing your off-speed pitches so much. I said, and we didn't really have a frame of reference for you before this year because he's been hurt so much. Has that been a change? Like were you more of a primary fastball guy, and he said yes. And I think, and I have to go back and look at my notes, but I think kind of the gist of what he told me was that he still would like to use his fastball more. He's having so much success with the off-speed pitches, and so I wonder if there's like another gear to Hunter Dietz that, not necessarily in velocity, but just in effectiveness, if he can get the fastball going the way that he wants to. Because I think there's been 2 or 3 outings this year where the velocity's been good, but the command may have not been as good as what the off-speed pitch is. And when you've got 4 pitches, you're going to go with the ones that work, especially when you've got a swing and miss pitch the way that cutter is.
Yeah, I think when I talked to him a couple weeks ago, he wanted to use his fastball more to set up his other pitches. Against South Carolina, they didn't have an answer for that cutter, so he just kept throwing it. But, Florida's watched the video of that outing, so their righties are probably going to be sitting cutter, and he's got the ability to throw 96, 97 by them. If you're trying to look off speed, it's going to be a rough day for you because he can go to that fastball. Hopefully, if he's got, the fastball command, then – be a rough day for Florida hitters. And the thing about him is he releases that ball so high. It's 6'8", 6'9" release point, and he can carry it at the top of the zone, or he can throw downhill and get you at the bottom of the zone, then come back with that, either the slower breaking ball or the cutter off of that. And I love his ability to change speeds on the cutter. He might throw it 88, he might throw it 83, 84, but it's two different shapes, and it's hard. It's hard to game plan against him.
Does the cutter look like the curveball for him? Because I have whenever he slows that cutter down, I have a hard time differentiating between the two, because the curveball is about an 81, 83 pitch, I think, for him.
No, it's a different shape.
Okay.
It's a different shape out of the hand. It's got a different, if you look at the release point, it's got just a little bit. Yeah, I don't want to say too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can. The curveball is different out of the hand than the cutter. So
I told you it's my kryptonite, trying to read off-speed pitches. I have a hard time doing it, and I think part of it too is, like, everybody calls, or there are a lot of people who call different pitches different things, and I always struggle with that too.
Yeah, it took me a while with this sweeper to call a sweeper, because like I saw it more as a slurve, but then now I'm seeing
even a
true,
slurve. I mean, when did slurve become a word?
Well, slurve was a word back when I played. That's
Was it?
always
Okay.
It's kind of a combination between a slider and a
curve,
curveball.
right.
The slider was tighter, the curveball was more here, the slurve was in between.
Yeah. But the point being that slurve was a word that at some point in time, like again, going back to like your baseball traditionalists, your purists, I don't know.
Well, I mean, words come about. Look at spurtability. I'd never heard that until last week.
How about bubbability?
Now, bubbability.
If you guys saw Bubba put on his headset in between for these interviews, you would see what bubbability is all about.
I'm not going to lie to you. That thing just kicked my butt the whole interview, and it wouldn't even stay on my ear. I'm doing something wrong. So anyway, the headset won. Hopefully, we'll play better than I did at putting on the headset this weekend.
Real quick before we get out of here, what do you think of these Norm DeBryan era jerseys they're going to wear tomorrow night? And they're going to wear. Everybody's wearing number 23. It's kind of like in MLB, they do Jackie Robinson Day or Roberto Clemente Day for the Pirates. Everybody's going to be wearing number 23. I talked to Robert Kissabeth, who was kind of the brains behind this, I guess, at the U of A, and he said they actually had to check with the NCAA and make sure that it was okay for everybody to wear the same number. So everybody's going to wear 23. They'll have individual, names on the back. So Stewart, Gackle, Helfrich, whatever. But this is a pretty cool deal, and it seems like, from the feedback I've gotten from people, people love these throwback jerseys.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. Now, if you ask Norm DeBryan, he's probably like, I don't need all this.
Oh, that's exactly what he told me. He said, boy, I need to find the quote. I remember he ended the quote with, "But whatever," So it was basically like I didn't want him to do anything for me.
Well, he's so humble, and but all this, the honor that he's getting and the recognition, it's so well deserved. I mean, it's so hard for me to think. You look at this Razorback baseball program and how far it's come, and the fact that we've done it with basically Norm DeBryan and Dave Van Horn. Where you look at these other programs, there's coaching changes all the time. I think the stability there and you can't ask for two better people to represent Razorback baseball and everything that Coach D did back in the day to get us to where we are today. I mean, I hope this is something they do every year. I'd like to see it every year. Don't know if they'll do it or not, but I think it's awesome.
So they're going to auction off these game-worn jerseys, and it'll benefit the Razorback Foundation. There is a chance that there will be a retail component to this down the road, but just to tell people real quick what Robert Kissabeth told me, he said that whenever you get a jersey and have it available for retail or a hat, because they're wearing specialty hats too, he said that's like an 18 to 24 month process to get those given to Nike and then get them out to your vendors. And of course, Norm only got elected to the College Baseball Hall of Fame last June, and so this whole process for a specialty jersey began in July. So I think that there's a possibility that there will be a retail option for these down the road, but if you want them right now, you got to pony up some money through this auction at the Razorback Foundation after the game Friday.
I'll tell you what, I want one.
How much would you bid for one of these jerseys?
I don't know. That's a good question, but I'll do whatever it takes.
Would it be a higher number than Crystal would bid?
Yes, way higher. But it's about just having a piece of Norm DeBryan forever. And I'll never wear it. It'll go in my game room. It'll go in a shadow box in my game room. And I'll look at it every time I go up there. And it'll probably be the prize piece to my game room. I mean, I love the guy. I'd do anything in the world for him, and he would do the same for us, or for me, or for any former player. And so, man, I'm excited.
Should be a great weekend. The Razorbacks and the Gators, 6 o'clock Friday night will be the first game. You can hear Bubba with Phil Elson on the Razorback Sports Network. We'll have coverage throughout the weekend, of course, at WholeHogSports.com. On tomorrow's show, we'll talk about the Sweet 16 game tonight between Arkansas and Arizona. We'll know by then if the Razorbacks are going to the Elite Eight. Hope to see you then or at our website, WholeHogSports.com.